Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source for daily Blues content. I'm Josh Hyman.
And I'm Thomas Welch.
We got a good episode for you today, starting off the week with sort of a overarching episode. Not going to go into any too specific storyline, just sort of a reaction to the big picture this episode. We're going to be going into the Blues 4-1 loss against the Anaheim Ducks, and then giving a state of the Blue-nion address, sort of reacting to the first 10 games. Hey, it was your idea, Tommy. Don't laugh.
I know it was, but I'm like, oh man, I can't believe it.
Hey, it's the title. We're running with it now.
We got to do it. Yeah.
We're 10 games into the season, 7-2-1, so we're going to be sort of giving our reactions, what we like, what we don't like, expectations for the rest of the season. It's going to be a fun episode, but before we get into that, I want to thank you guys for making us your first listen, whether it's you're waking up first thing in the morning, with your morning coffee, or your commute on your way to work or school. We appreciate you guys making us your first listen. That's why we make these episodes so short and bite-sized, so we appreciate that. That being said, before we get into sort of the fun stuff, because the Blues have had a successful start, they did suffer one of their few losses of the season in their last matchup against a probably weaker opponent in the Anaheim Ducks. So, Tommy, what are your initial reactions to that 4-1 loss? Are you concerned? Do you think it was a bad loss? Or do you think John Gibson sort of just stole the show for the Ducks and you're not too concerned?
I wouldn't say it was a good loss. I wouldn't say it's a bad loss. It's kind of right in between, right? I think the offensive pressure for the Blues was there, in my opinion. Maybe they took it didn't look as good in the third period for sure, but that line of Kyrou, Thomas, and Tarasenko was firing on all cylinders all night. They probably could have had 3 goals amongst themselves. I know Kyrou had one wide open in the slot and just kind of roofed it, missed high. Robert Thomas had one that I think Gibson just got a piece of. So it wasn't for a lack of chances by any stretch of the imagination. It was just Gibson's a good goalie. He's top 5 in save percentage almost every year, and he held the Ducks in there. And as much as we like to rag on the Ducks, and like those West Coast teams have kind of been rebuilding for a while now, so it's easy to say like, oh, this should be a manageable stretch for the St. Louis Blues, especially on their essentially one of their first road trips of the season. But anytime you go to the West Coast, there's always that overarching cloud, or that dark cloud of hey, we could go and party it up a little bit, and if we're not playing a super stacked opponent tomorrow, we could show up a little bit tired and probably still take care of business. I'm not saying the Blues did that, but there's potential for that anytime you go on a road trip. And I think with the Anaheim Ducks, I don't think people are giving them enough credit to where they are, because I think they are kind of in the middle of a rebuild, right? But you can kind of see the pieces in place that they're going to rebuild around. I mean, Gibson is a stud and one of the best goalies in the league. Zegras didn't play against us, but he's going to be, the last time we played him, I'm pretty sure he tried a lacrosse goal, so that tells you everything you need to know about him. Terry scored against us. He's been having a fantastic season. Obviously, Jamie Drysdale as well, who's 19 years old and tearing it up in the league too. So I think they have the pieces in place to kind of build around, and if they kind of fill out the supporting cast, they're not far away from competing and potentially making the playoffs. So as much as I would like to say, oh, this was a bad loss for the St. Louis Blues, they should have manhandled the Ducks, I don't think that's fair to the Blues or the Ducks for that matter. The Blues were missing Torrey Krug, and he was, in my opinion, the hottest defenseman for them right now. He's 6th on the team in points, and they were missing some other guys as well. So all things considered, I'm okay with losing that game. I'm not okay with losing that game, but it could have been worse. Let's say that.
Yeah. I think, all said and done, big picture, it's not really a huge blow. And, pretty much second and third segment today is going to be reacting to the 7-2-1 start and the loss that they suffered against the Ducks. Fortunately, didn't really show any glaring holes that I think we're going to need to talk about. Like, there aren't really any big storylines of, oh man, how are the Blues going to deal with this? Obviously, the offense is still struggling a little bit, and that could be a little bit concerning. But with the hot start that the offense had, I don't think that you can really look at this team and say, oh, no, this last 3-game stretch where they've been scoring 1 or 2 goals a game, that's the norm. It's clear that there's some firepower among the forward group on this team. And the one concern coming out of the past few games, there's been a couple losses and there has been goal scoring. And as we saw in the first, 7 or so games, that's not an issue for this year's St. Louis Blues. So they've been suffering from depth, their depth being tested, with O'Reilly and Saad being out for a while, very recently coming back, and now Torrey Krug, who is playing like their best offensive defenseman, going down. Overall, just a frustrating season, I think, for a team that was really firing on all cylinders to continue to lose integral pieces, and not to mention them being unable to call up Scott Perunovich due to the league not having a backup plan for COVID protocol, which we should probably get into on the second segment here because I'm looking at the time. But yeah, it's a little frustrating to see that the Blues, being fully vaccinated, fully COVID compliant, are now potentially looking at are one player away from having to dress less than 18 skaters in a game, which is just wild to think about. So maybe that's how we'll start off the second segment before getting into the state of the Blue-nion address, which I'm so excited that we titled this episode. Don't regret that at all. But before we get into that, I want to tell you guys about DirecTV Stream. Now tell me if this sounds familiar. You're sitting down. Let's say it's a Sunday. It's a perfect example. You got football on starting at 1 o'clock. It's a Sunday. You got football on at 1 o'clock. Hockey on at 4:30. You got a matinee game. Basketball on at night. And you don't want to get 4 different remotes, 2 different HDMI cords to try to watch them all. It's frustrating. It's complicated, but that problem is no more with DirecTV Stream. DirecTV Stream is a great way to get your TV together. It brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there is no annual contract, so get rid of the clutter and the confusion. Get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That is directtv.com. Compatible device required and content varies by package. Now, before we continue this episode, I want to tell you guys about a brand new sponsor here at Locked On Blues, and that is Indeed. Now, if any of you are like me in a similar situation, I'm about to graduate college. I am terrified going into the job market right now, but one thing that I know I can rely on is Indeed. Indeed is a hiring partner that gets you what you really want, a short list of quality candidates as fast as possible, because you can do it all: attract, interview, and hire, all at Indeed. Don't struggle on your own to find quality candidates. Indeed can help you hire the right people right now. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process, so you can find talent with the skills you need through tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Indeed makes it easier for star applicants to shine with over 135 assessment tests. From cooking to coding, you can pick what skills are important to you from over 135 assessments and get a clear view of your top talent abilities faster. So get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Get a $75 credit at Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer valid through December 31st. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, Tom.
You know what they say, Josh?
What do they say?
They say, brand new whip, got no keys. Tailor my clothes, no starch. Please, as soon as I know it, you can go. You've got M's in the bank, like yes, indeed. So I'm not saying that's a very popular song. So I think Indeed's doing over there. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, wow. Excellent transition and segue there from Tommy. That being said, there is one more little frustrating note surrounding the St. Louis Blues to get into before we react to what has been a great start to the season, and that is the fact that they are currently on the verge of playing a man short due to COVID restrictions. Blues have been faced with injuries and COVID protocols that leads to them being unable to call up Scott Perunovich or anybody for that matter due to cap constraints. So if they lose one more, I think it's one more, maybe two more now that O'Reilly's back. But yeah, they're on the verge of.
I think they're at 20.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're on the verge of playing a man down, and I just think it's a little frustrating. The Blues have done everything right in terms of COVID protocols, compliances, etc. And now, due to, I guess, what you could consider bad luck, they're now being forced to potentially, just play at a disadvantage. I think that there should have been a workaround for that. I think there should be some sort of cap relief in place. But that being said, Tommy, what do you think about the prospect of playing with 11 forwards or 5 defensemen?
Yeah, I think you summed it up nicely, kind of. And the Blues did kind of didn't release a statement, but they did send a request to the NHL and say, hey, like, we're dealing with this issue right now. Our entire team is fully vaxxed, so you can't blame it on like us. It's just bad circumstances. So is there any way we could get some cap relief to call up a player that we actually want to call up, and Scott Perunovich? And the league said no. So I think as far as the league, I think they can L's across the board this entire year when it comes to that kind of stuff. But yeah. I think if it gets to a point where the Blues are faced with either having to call up somebody that puts them over the cap or playing a man down, I can't imagine that the league would be like, oh yeah, just you guys will play one man down and then you'll be at a disadvantage even though you followed all the rules and protocols. Like, that just seems like absurd to me. But also, like, this whole the season seemed to me, so I wouldn't put it past them either.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like one of those things, like, hopefully we don't find out, and still, obviously, there still needs to be a little bit more to go wrong before we would be in that situation. But the fact that we're this close, 10 games in to the regular season, is a little bit concerning. And I would have just loved to see Scott Perunovich play regardless of the other implications. I think he's going to be great. All the takes that I've seen said that he would be a top 4 defender if he came in, and it's just not the right time, not the right fit, which I personally haven't watched him play enough in the AHL, but the statistics don't lie, and I would not be surprised to see him make an impact immediately if and when he does get the call up.
He's got 16 points in 9 games in the A.
That
with the Thunderbirds
ridiculous.
Leads the AHL right now.
Yeah, that's absurd. He's he's gonna be so good when he comes up.
But the problem was the reason that he couldn't get called up. I don't know how much he's making right now in the A, but they said once he gets called up to the Blues, because he's kind of like I think he's 24, I believe, which is kind of like an older in terms of prospect because he went through and graduated college all the way. So when he does get called up to the Blues, his salary is like $925,000, I think. So that's why, like, he's not making that right now, but he gets that signing bonus when he does get called up to the Blues. So that's why he wouldn't fit in the cap. So
yeah, meaning if we want to see Scott Perunovich, it might have to be either a long-term injured reserve or a future after a trade down the line. Makes it a little bit more complicated. Or the league finally says fine. Yeah, or the league screws their head on straight and says, right, oh, we won't put you guys at a significant disadvantage by playing a man down. And also, we want to see Scott Perunovich play, so you guys get an exception because the Tampa Bay Lightning cheated their way to a Stanley Cup. So what's one extra $925,000 player?
Yeah, and I will say that I don't know if Scott turns the entire outcome of the game against the Ducks, but I think that game's a lot closer with him in there instead of Rosen. And not to be frank and brash, but I think Perunovich is a much further along player in terms of skill set and what he brings to a team in his development than a guy like Rosen. So I don't know. It would have been nice to see, but we'll still have to wonder about what ifs for now, I guess.
Yep. Yeah. And J-Tups mentions in chat, Vegas is in the same situation. Yeah. So it's not just the Blues that are dealing with this, and I think once we see the first domino to fall, whether or not it is with the Blues, I would hope that there's a change that gets made, because usually that's what it takes. It's unfortunate, but usually the league needs to get sort of slapped in the face with these things. And it'll take, Vegas or St. Louis going out there, man down, and, lose or win, taking it to the press conference, making his round on Twitter. League faces a little bit of pressure. Maybe that's what it would take. But at the moment, looks like the Blues are going to be playing with fire a little bit in terms of staying healthy. But
speaking of playing with fire.
Yeah.
You want to talk about
Yes.
Vladimir Tarasenko?
I do, and I want to tie that into the entire state of the Blue-nion address. Going to keep saying it until it sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good.
So, but before we get into that, because I do know that that's going to be a big fun topic, because we've been a little on the downer end with the first two topics. So I want to save that one for the final segment. But before we get into that, what better way to start off a positive topic than with a good positive sponsor, and that is Built Bar. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and I love Thanksgiving. All the delicious food and treats, and there's so much to choose from. But if you want a yummy dessert that isn't so full of calories and sugar, you need to check out Built Bar. It is the perfect time for Built Bars. You can feast on something delicious and feel good about it. One slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end. But most Built Bars are only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar with plenty of protein. You can replace the coconut cream pie with coconut Built Bar, or go for a raspberry Built Bar instead of that raspberry pie. They're all covered in 100% chocolate, so they're delicious as well as very healthy. There's nothing like a Built Bar Black Friday as well, so mark your calendar. Black Friday will be a huge event with all sorts of surprises. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. And when we come back, we'll be reacting to the Blues 7-2-1 start, our expectations for the rest of the season, our hot takes, and more. So don't go anywhere. All right, Tommy. So we've had a bit of two sort of negative topics to start off the episode, which probably isn't fair because the Blues are 7-2-1, off to a super hot start. Unfortunately, a bit of a rocky road lately, which is why we're complaining a little bit more than I would like to be. But 10 games into the season, 7-2-1. What do you think has been the biggest surprise, in your opinion, for the Blues' hot start?
Oh God, I honestly, for me, I think it has to be Vladdy, because if anyone's been listening to the pod, this whole offseason, me especially, I was talking about how it could mess with the identity and the chemistry, having someone in here that doesn't want to be a part of it, and he seemed like he hasn't been the same player for so long. It seems like there's kind of a disconnect between some of his teammates and him, and I don't know whether that can be mended, especially with all the doctor thing thrown into it. For him to come out and literally just light the place on fire like he has. He's played 10 games. He's got 11 points. Just lighting it up. And I think we've really kind of witnessed a resurgence of Vladimir Tarasenko. And the last game seen Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou, who are essentially the future of this franchise. And if and when this team finally does to kind of turn the page, and I don't even know if they'll have to rebuild because they have so many young guys right now that are skilled and talented, but when they have to kind of like restructure or reframe, retool, guys are going to be at the forefront of it, right? Like that's going to be essentially like the faces of your franchise, or hopefully. And so for them to be on the same line right now in like almost a transition period with Vladimir Tarasenko, who has been the face of the franchise for so long. And it seems like Robert Thomas is figuring out like what he has to do in this league to be successful. He's also figuring out how to shoot the puck. And that sounds mean when I phrase it like that, but I think any playmaker who brings a goal scoring capability to their team, it's only going to make your playmaking ability that much better, because people have to respect your shooting capability. So even seeing Rob go in and like miss the net sometimes, or like shoot it right into Gibson's chest, the more he takes those shots, the more they're going to end up in the back of the net, and the more it's going to open up passes for him. Jordan Kyrou kind of the same way. The more he plays with Rob, the more they're going to get a feel for each other. And like, even just talking about it right now, like gives me goosebumps and like jitters, because you can see like guys in the league, like Ovi and Wilson, and like back, or like just there's so many dynamic, like Draisaitl and McDavid, like they all start somewhere, right? And I'm not saying these guys are going to end up like that, but there's anytime you have two players that have a connection and have that chemistry, like there's potential for them to just skyrocket to the moon, and they all have to start somewhere. And I feel like this season, from what I've seen in the 10 games from Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas so far, I mean, Jordan Kyrou is third on the team in points. Robert Thomas is fifth. So there's potential for them to just skyrocket. And once they figure it out and like are completing passes in the back of their head, it seems like every game they play together, they get better and better. And over the course of these next 3, 4, 5 years, we could really see the emergence of two dynamic superstars for the St. Louis Blues, which we haven't really seen two in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I've been excited about Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou forever. This season is sort of what I've been picturing ever since their rookie year. So it's been extremely exciting and a lot to look forward to for the rest of the season. One final question before we wrap this one up, Tommy. 10 games in, I want to get a big overreaction from you. What is the ceiling for this team? If they don't do the, or I guess not, what do they need
What's
to do?
the floor?
Disappointed. Give me a floor and give me a ceiling.
They got, for me, with, oh man, Kachuk Dimitra duo. Oh yeah, I like that, J-Tap. Now we're cooking. So for me, with the way that the playoffs have gone the last 2 years, I think everyone, like after the cup run, everyone's been kind of like, yeah, the Blues took a step down. They lost in the first round to Vancouver, lost in the first round to the Avalanche, got swept by the Avs. So, and the Avs have been kind of shaky to start the season too. So who knows what's going to happen there. But for me, with the firepower that this offense has, with the depth that this offense has, with the flashes that Jordan Binnington has shown early, with the potential of Scott Perunovich coming up and lighting the world on fire, with Torrey Krug playing like his old self from Boston, with Colton Parayko leading the team in block shots and doing everything that we knew he was capable of pre-injury. He looks like the same Colton Parayko we all knew and loved before he got hurt, so that's a great sign. I think all those things considered, the floor for me is making it past the first round. If they make it past the first round, I'll be content. I'm still going to want them to win the Stanley Cup. Obviously, they have the firepower to be a Stanley Cup contender. But if they lose in the first round again, after what I've seen so far this season, after the names they have on this roster, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think you summed it up perfectly. I think the floor is probably making it past the first round. I don't want to say the ceiling is winning a Stanley Cup because that feels like a cop-out. I do think that the stepping stones are in place for this to be a Stanley Cup team. I think the ceiling is that this team can contend. I think come playoff time, come getting out of the first round, I think they're going to make some noise. I don't think it's going to be sort of a flare out in the playoffs like we've seen the past few seasons. I think once they make the playoffs, knock on wood, we're going to see a team put up a lot of fight. Obviously, a couple of bounces, whoever gets hot is going to be the difference maker between winning a Stanley Cup and not. But I do think the pieces are there for this team to become a Stanley Cup contender. I don't think that they're there yet, but I don't think there really is any team in the NHL that's there yet because we're 10 games in. So it's going to be a fun ride to the end of the regular season.
Before you wrap it up, here's one of the deciding factors for me that I think that's going to put the Blues in a different position than a lot of teams. Like, I know we talked about this before on the pod, but with the new acquisitions of Justin Falk and Torrey Krug, Buchnevich and Saad and all these guys, the St. Louis Blues, the last, really it feels like 3 years and through the pandemic, have been kind of retooling their team to look a lot different. And we've seen core pieces of this team go out in different fashion. And because of the pandemic, they haven't really gotten to get close with them. They haven't gotten to go out after games and go get beers, go to the restaurant. And they haven't really had that. They've had team chemistry, but this team has a lot more team chemistry. And this team feels a lot more like a brotherhood or like a fraternity. St. Louis Blues hockey that we've seen time and time again before the pandemic happened. I feel like that's one of the things that the coaches drill home. That's one of the things that's made the Blues so successful. So getting back to that this season, even just little things like guys like joking with each other, answering the question of the day that the social media team's been doing, which I absolutely love those. Jordan Binnington skating out there in Nolan's gear. It's little things like that that make you think like, okay, this is like a brotherhood, like guys joking around and like feel good kind of thing instead of like playing on the same pairing or a line with someone that you barely know. So I think I think there's a lot of teams in the NHL that had their core in place and didn't bring in a whole bunch of players throughout the pandemic, Tampa Bay included, which is probably why one of the reasons why they did so well is because they already knew each other and they already had that fraternity and brotherhood formed, whereas the Blues didn't. But I think it's going to even the playing field this season that everyone can do that, and I think the Blues' success is going to be indicative of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think JTAP says it perfectly in chat. They're just out there having fun. I think they're putting a little bit less pressure on themselves as a result. And it doesn't feel as much as like showing up to work as it may have in the past. But yeah, it's led to an entertaining result on the ice, 7-2-1 through the first 10 games. Couldn't be happier. And I think, when it's all said and done, these few losses the last few weeks are obviously annoying. But they're gonna lead to more success in the long run. And we're gonna have it covered for you here, all at the Locked On Blues podcast. So make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. But if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. That way you can join the live stream and jump in the chat, get your name read live on the air. We appreciate everyone in chat, JTAP, everyone else that was watching. Makes it so much more fun for us to record. Hit that follow button on all our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL. Follow Tommy at TWelcher15. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, let's go Blues.